Hello and welcome to another edition of Life Outdoors. I am your host, Chris Reckling. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. If you've seen Life Outdoors before, you know that this is a show about things happening in Hampton Roads, all things outdoors. And today, a little bit different. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about history, not just little history, but a lot of history, a lot of great Virginia Beach history that has to do with the great outdoors. Going back to the days of wildfowl, market hunting, winter escapades, you name it. And we're also going to show you an amazing place at the ocean front. It's all about the DeWitt Cottage, and nobody knows it better than our guest today. It is Parke Atkinson with the Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum. Parke, welcome to Life Outdoors. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so this is a kind of a little unique subject for Life Outdoors, but the DeWitt Cottage and the Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum is all about life outdoors. It is a way of life at the oceanfront that goes back over 100 years, and it goes back, it celebrates a time of hunting, outdoorsmanship, and it just not just that, but great art and a little bit of everything. So tell us first and foremost about the DeWitt Cottage, and then we'll jump into what it has to offer.
Yeah, well, very fitting. It's a ducky day outside. It's spitting rain and overcast, and so the DeWitt Cottage, we'll start with that. So the DeWitt Cottage is actually the oldest freestanding beach cottage at the Virginia Beach oceanfront. It was constructed in 1895 by a gentleman named Bernard Holland. He was a Norfolk Southern executive, and he built this as a wedding gift to his wife. And believe it or not, she was not a big fan of it because the waves were too loud. And so they actually moved across Atlantic Avenue to another piece of property, and the house was sold. Bernard Holland was one of the first mayors of Virginia Beach. He was originally from Norfolk, and then it was sold to Cornelius DeWitt in 1909, and hence the DeWitt Cottage name. His family held on to it essentially until the late 80s, early 90s.
It is an impressive structure. It is thick. It is strong. It has withstood countless storms, and it is no other structure quite like it on the Virginia Beach oceanfront in the resort area, other than maybe the life-saving station.
True.
Because you're surrounded by, as you can see, these giant hotels.
It's one of the cool things I think about the museum is that it really does kind of take you back in time. It's constructed in an old beach cottage fashion. The brick walls are 14 inches thick. It's got a wraparound porch, and yeah, it's on either side of it. It's the 4 Points by Sheridan, and then the newly constructed Moxie Hotel. So, you know, it's kind of a little bit of a hole in the wall on this stretch of resort construction and development that really harkens back to a different time of the Virginia Beach oceanfront and boardwalk.
So it was built by the Hollands 130 years ago and passed down to the DeWitts, the sisters Caroline, Julia, Harriet, and Katrine. I think it was Katrine or Katrina.
Yep.
They took care of it, and they had it for a while, and then they sold it to the city of Virginia Beach, right?
Brokered they were pretty thrifty. They brokered a deal with the city that essentially said, we will sell you the cottage if you give us a stipend throughout the remainder of our lives. And that happened in 1988, and the last sister actually passed away in 2007. So I don't think the city quite imagined they were going to be paying that long. But one of the stipulations of that agreement was that it remained, it was a few players in this. It was the city of Virginia Beach. It was also the Virginia Beach Historical Society that said it had to remain in perpetuity a cultural and an educational center. And so that's why the museum now exists within the framework of those four walls. It cannot be developed, it cannot be torn down, and it always has to be some sort of educational or cultural center.
So basically, it is one of the not hidden gems, but one of the true gems at the oceanfront.
Yep.
There's, other than the Cavalier, maybe,
which is still 30 years older than the Cavalier, if you figure that was in the 1920s. So,
right.
It's truly one of the original gems of the oceanfront, and it's on the city as well as the Commonwealth of Virginia's historical register.
Yep, dedicated to conservation and education, and that's when the museum came in. We'll take you inside the museum in the next segment, but let's just talk more about that. That was founded 30 years ago. How significant is that partnership between the museum and the DeWitt Cottage, because it's one and the same, right?
It's one. Yeah, it is. It is. It may seem a bit confusing. So the cottage itself is actually owned by the city of Virginia Beach. So the museum has a lease with the city that says they will operate a museum within the walls of it. And so that lease, we have to be operating a certain amount of hours every year, and we have to be providing educational and historical
Education.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm saying.
Sure.
So that's part of the agreement. And so 1995 is when the Back Bay Wildfowl Guild actually founded, based on there was an old group of guys that had in the Virginia Beach Convention Center I think it was the Atlantic Wildfowl Show that they had every single year. And that was really the basis of the carvers, the artisans that all got together and signed the lease with the city to say, hey, we're going to house the artifacts of all the sporting and gunning culture of Back Bay and Virginia Beach here at the DeWitt Cottage.
And let's just stay back in that time frame. Well, actually, before that, back at the turn of the century, market hunting was huge. Our area was known, points north, for supplying wildfowl. Hunting was great. They destroyed the birds back in the day. I mean, they did everything they can to wipe them out.
Yep.
Thankfully, some controls were put into place, which kind of stopped that market, if you will. But that was a way of life for City of Virginia Beach. Anyone growing up around here, they farmed, they hunted, they fished. And that's what the Heritage Museum does best, is preserve that history, right?
That's right, yep. And so really up and down the East Coast, from Back Bay, the Albemarle, Pamlico Sound, all the way up, through Currituck, and then even to the Eastern Shore and up the Chesapeake Bay, that was just a way of life for people. They hunted what was called market birds. They would harvest these birds in the hundreds, and then they would sell them off to markets up north. And there was a lot of people that came from up north in D.C. that, Teddy Roosevelt is a big one that you hear about a lot of times. And it's really cool to read the history on a lot of these gunning clubs in and around Back Bay and Knott's Island, because that really was one of the early economic drivers for people that were in, Currituck, Pungo, and down in the county, as you would say, back then. And so we've just really tried to not only perpetuate the history of that, but then to also, from an environmental standpoint, tie in what we can do to help sustain the ecosystem of the wildlife and the wildfowl that still inhabit Back Bay.
Coastal Virginia's natural resources. We are along the Atlantic Flyway, which the birds follow from Canada to point south. It's only natural that hunting was such a big way of life back in the day, and it is still today. Not quite on the same scale, but it is definitely celebrated by so many avid hunters and fishermen and the likes. And preserving that history is critical to the mission of the Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum. We're going to take a short break right now. We're going to come back and take you inside the DeWitt Cottage and show you some amazing works of art and some amazing history. So stick around for more Life Outdoors. Welcome back to another edition of Life Outdoors. I am your host, Chris Reckling. Today we are talking about a way of life that is preserved very well, I might say, at the DeWitt Cottage at the ocean front. The Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum. Parke Atkinson is secretary. Is that right? Is that your title, secretary of the Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum?
The worst looking secretary you've ever seen. Yep.
Well, it's well, you're on camera today, so it is what it is. So let's just start right there.
Yeah.
Talk about the group, because this is a group of people, like-minded people, that are preserving a natural way of life at the museum. Talk about the group and what is y'all's mission.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll back up a little bit, and I kind of touched on it earlier, but how I got affiliated with it. My wife and I were biking down the boardwalk, and I came across this cottage that had a canvas back on the sign, and being, a hunter and from the Eastern Shore, I said, let's go in here. And I met the current director, Lynn Hightower, at the time, and he invited me in. He said, you might like our next guest speaker that we have. And it was Billy Crockett, who was a carver from the Eastern Shore. And that's when I first got introduced to the museum. And then I met some of the board members, and now I'm the secretary of the board of directors. I've been the vice president in the past. But I really was drawn to not only the artwork, but the mission of the museum. And so the mission of the museum, we're a fully operational 501c3. So it's a nonprofit that operates, and our mission is to promote, preserve, protect, and to provide. And promoting the education and the conservation of the arts, preserving the oral and written history, protecting the natural resources, as I talked about with Back Bay and the lower Virginia Beach area, and then providing a venue through the cottage where people can collaborate, can celebrate that history that we talk about.
I think this is the part where I make my admission, and
Let's hear it. I can't wait.
I know. Lifelong Virginia Beach resident. I'm down at the oceanfront all the time. Have my whole life.
Yep.
Never been in there until last Saturday, and I am so sorry because, I mean, if it's in Hampton Roads, we talk about it in Hampton Roads, show, and for some reason I never went in.
Look, so this is one of the things where we hear
I feel terrible about that.
It's fine though, because to me that's just an opportunity. So we hear people that say that all the time, and Lynn Hightower, our director, has been really good about starting to get into some of these networking groups. And so we've hosted a couple events like coffees on Fridays for different business owners. And so many people say that. And I've lived in Virginia Beach my whole life and I've never seen this. And so that just goes to show us that there's so much more potential for people to be able to take advantage of what we have to offer.
Well, let's take you inside. Now's a good opportunity. So, Antique Decoy Gallery. It's there's some incredible works of art. Tell me what you find inside.
Yeah, so as you can see, the interior, first floor of what we're looking at right now is an absolutely incredible, I mean, it's a milestone exhibit, to be honest with you, from a decoy and a sporting art standpoint. So when you enter the museum, it's kind of set up like an old hunting lodge that you would find down in Back Bay. So they've got the wingback chair by the fireplace. You've got an old chocolate lab that's carved by Charlie Siddell, who was the carver at the aquarium for a number of years. And then we've just got a lot of old photos, historical relics, a lot from the market hunting days that you talked about. So big, long punt guns and lights that they would put on the front of these sneak boats. And then as you can see through here, we've got a second to none display of McNair decoys. And we'll get more into the artist himself, but we've got a lot of birds that are in the old gunning fashion. So you'll see, all of them have been rigged up just like they would be used. You really should throw it out and you can hunt right over top of it. But a lot of these are in the contemporary style. A lot of these are just old working birds that have been carved, but we'll talk a lot about the artist himself coming up. But that's the first floor. So we also have a gift shop. In the gift shop, you can find different decoys on commission, everything from just sea glass, jewelry, and other, just apparel for the museum. Going upstairs, so this is supposed to be set up how you would find the bedrooms in the cottage in the early 1900s. Keep in mind that we're also an event venue, so we host weddings, and we host about a dozen weddings a year out on the grounds of the museum. That is the oldest surfboard that we know of in Virginia Beach, and that right there is Peter DeWitt. He had a buddy that actually was an engineer at Langley and created the pontoons for seaplanes. And so he came back from Hawaii and decided that he was going to make a surfboard similar to that. And so you could see that longboard up there. And then upstairs, we also have a gallery that has probably the largest amount of Virginia Beach artifacts between postcards, menus to restaurants, old boardwalk memorabilia, stuff from the the Peppermint Club and the Cavalier, and then another exhibit that's currently on display of the artist's son, Ian McNair, which has about 75 of his birds up there as well. So, yeah, that's a quick tour of the museum.
And you also have a continuous playing video that's with lots of pictures of the way Virginia Beach was in the early 1900s.
Yep. So a lot of, like I said, original boardwalk photos, memorabilia that's playing on a continuous loop with a narrator, that Edgar Brown, that is pretty much explaining what all the images are that you're looking at. We've also got a lot of memorabilia upstairs from the old hunting clubs in Back Bay. A lot of the flatware in China that you would find in those, and then just photos of everything from the Lighthouse Club and the Whalehead Club, and some of these really, really historically relevant clubs that you would find down in Back Bay and South Virginia Beach.
And as we said, Parke, the mission of the Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum is to preserve the region's robust cultural heritage in hunting. And as you can see, you're also preserving a way of life with the cottage itself, and then the surfing. So there is so much to be said for the life outdoors back in the day, still preserved today, that you can see for free.
Yep.
Which people need to understand. Just
Yep.
walk in, enjoy.
Free admission, donations are obviously highly encouraged as we're a nonprofit, but it's an opportunity to kind of take a step back off of the hustle and bustle of the oceanfront and the boardwalk and really be able to kind of enjoy and learn about what really made Virginia Beach what it is today in the early 1900s.
And true to form, there's not a wave in sight behind him.
Yeah, no, well, I don't know.
Look at that.
Maybe
Even
he could
back-
take that to the surf park,
Even back then, it was flat.
Maybe if we took that off the wall and took it down to the surf park, we could see what it was really all about.
Yeah, wouldn't that be funny? All right, Parke. Listen, now's a good opportunity to take a short little break here, and we're going to tell you about an event celebrating 30 years of the Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum. A really cool event. We'll tell you more about that. So stick around, everybody. You're watching Life Outdoors. Welcome back to Life Outdoors, everyone. I am your host, Chris Reckling, joined by, this is Parke Atkinson with the Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum. We've told you about the DeWitt Cottage. We've told you about the museum itself. We've shown you the outside. We took you to the inside. And now we're going to tell you about a special event celebrating 30 years of the museum itself. You guys, Parke, you mentioned this is a venue that can be rented out for any occasion. And you also throw special events. You have a very special event coming up real soon. Actually, when this airs, it'll be next weekend, which is the 20th. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep, the
Okay.
20th from 4 to 7.
Let's talk about that event itself. What's it all about?
Yeah. So as you stated, we are an event venue, corporate events, family reunions, weddings. But this event, we always have a big fundraiser as a nonprofit every year, and we've typically done an oyster roast. But we just saw that there was a really unique opportunity here with the McNairs and one of our board members, Mark and Margie Cromwell, who have been gracious enough to put their own personal decoy collection on display there to really kind of feature the artist and his family. And so we were going to do this 5 years ago for the 125th anniversary and the 25th anniversary of the museum, but COVID hit. And so this was our opportunity to say, you know what, here's the 130th anniversary of the cottage, 30th anniversary of the Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum, and let's put on a big party. And so next Saturday, we've got the artists that are coming in, and it's going to be a meet and greet with Mark McNair, Ian McNair, and Colin McNair. So Ian and Colin are two sons of Mark's. Ian is also a renowned decoy carver, and then his younger brother, Colin, is the decoy specialist for Copley Sporting Art, which is located right outside of Boston in Massachusetts. And so what we're going to do is have a catered event. We're going to have a nice cocktail hour, and then we're going to allow people to ask them questions, learn a little bit more about kind of their motivations and influences. And then from there, we're going to auction off 3 pieces, of which we've got 2 of here today, all of which are going to go back to supporting the museum and our mission.
So you were looking at some pictures from Buzz Hayes.
Yep.
Thank you, Buzz, so much for your pictures. And thank you, Mark and Margie, for helping us set this up and providing so many great works of art that you'll see in there. But they're not alone. You guys, there's a long list of volunteers and people that make this museum happen.
Yep, and I would be remiss without thanking each and every one of them. And obviously our board of directors has been instrumental in putting this together. Amy Rhodes, our president, who was a former president of the Surf Rider Foundation. We've got Buzz Hayes, who is a renowned wildlife photographer. Lives right in Shadow Lawn across from the museum. Mark and Margie, who have been gracious enough to take their own personal belongings and put on display in the museum, along with Ian McNair, a couple buddies of mine, Scott Hubbard and Brian Terry, who have all donated items to be on display and really showcase the talent of these artists. And so we're really looking forward to it. People's Auction, Il Giardino, There's quite a few individuals that have really allowed this thing to come together.
Tickets still available?
It's technically sold out,
Yeah.
but that sounds good. We can find you a ticket if you want one. So yes, it's limited capacity at 120 people. There are still some tickets available that are able, if you call the museum, that will be able to sell.
If somebody wants to be involved, wants to become a sponsor, a benefactor, or just want to learn more.
Yep. I would recommend that you come into the museum and, learn a little bit more about what we've got going on. Obviously you can call the museum, call the number that's on the website. Lynn Hightower, like I said, is our acting director. We've got Amy Rhodes. If you know any of those people personally, myself, obviously reach out. But come into the museum, give us a call, shoot us an email. There's a contact us form on the website. We'd love more volunteers. And we'd love to continue to just perpetuate this mission that we have.
Okay, so we're going to show you one last great shot from Buzz Hayes of the DeWitt College, but now at the cottage. But let's talk about what you have in front of you. These are going to be auctioned off. This is Mark's some of his best work.
Yeah. So
I mean, good grief, man! How beautiful is that wood duck?
So there's not a whole lot of wood ducks that he's done. For one, for two,
Really?
This is and this is a preening wood duck. I mean, the wood ducks are difficult because there's a lot of colors in a wood duck. You preen a black duck and you've got browns and blacks and some yellow for the bill and some blue and purple. A wood duck has yellows and blues and we've got some
so much
brown
color.
and so it's a highly sought after piece. Mark actually was featured in Garden and Gun back in the May and April 2024. He was the featured artist, and then he actually was put on for their SeaWe Southeast Wildlife Expo in Charleston. And the last wood duck that he sold, similar to this, went for over $20,000. So there's some significant value in this block of wood. And as I was saying earlier, all of the birds you can see here on the bottom, McNair, are in the old gunning fashion, so they have weights. So, theoretically, you could throw this out in Lake Wavy out back and see how it floats. Maybe we'll try that after this.
Don't even bring that up.
And we've got the DeWitt cottage rig that he's carved in here on the bottom. And so, just some incredible work. I mean, Mark, I think, can be summed up best by the curator at the Shelburne Museum in Vermont, who said, Mark McNair is the dean of contemporary decoy carvers. We've all had great masters here at the Shelburne, Lang, Crowell, Charles Shang Wheeler, but it really speaks to Mark's place within this field, that he's the only living artist that's ever been featured in the Shelburne Museum, and his stuff's currently on display there. And so to be able to have 277 pieces of his on display at the Wildfowl Museum is something that's really special, and again, it's unparalleled anywhere else. And then, this is a blue-winged teal that was done by Ian that will also be auctioned off. Same thing. He's obviously inscribed his signature on the bottom with the leather loop on the front where you would tie your weight. But yeah, these are all great, and his son Colin has got a life-size mermaid that will also be auctioned off. So there's some really cool and unique pieces that we're going to have on display and able to be purchased.
So I mean, if you know anything about ducks, they come in all different shapes and sizes, and the colors are one thing, which is incredibly hard to get right. But it's the shape of the duck itself, and you can just see it in the blue-winged teal. Show the tail of it, because I mean they all have a certain size, but just flip it over so we can see the top of the tail. And I mean, it's just great work. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
and it's amazing that it's a family affair.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, their story is just so cool. Ian and Colin grew up, we all grew up over on the Eastern Shore in Craddockville, and Ian says that he just remembers growing up with a spoke shave in his hand and going to the Easton Wildfowl Festival and all of these shows. And so it's just cool how they've all kind of brought it together, and it's coming full circle. And we're just very fortunate to be able to have all three of them there to kind of get together and to showcase the work of their family.
Once again, the 30-year celebration, congratulations on that, is Saturday, September 20th.
And if you're interested in these birds, by the way, sorry, I need to say this. The auction is live online right now through People's Auction House in Chesapeake. You can find that on People's Auction's website or the museum's website, and you can bid on these birds. You do not have to be there in person.
Good to know. With that, we're going to wrap up this edition of Life Outdoors. Parke Atkinson with the Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum and the DeWitt Cottage, and to all the volunteers who make that work, preserving that beautiful piece of history and heritage here in Virginia Beach. Thank you for what you do. Until then, thank you guys for watching this episode of Life Outdoors, and don't forget to live your life outdoors.